Madam Chair. Mr. DeJoy, did you have any protesters at your house last night?
Not last night.
President Biden called for you to resign, Mr. DeJoy?
No, the president has not called for me to resign.
Any member of your board called for you to resign?
No, sir.
None of the Republicans on the board haven't called, any of the Democrats called for it?
We have, it's hard to tell in our board meetings because we all very much act in a bipartisan manner focused on postal issues. But there are two gentlemen that, the chair identified that he's a registered Democrat, and I think there's another gentleman on the board.
Mr. Bloom's a Democrat, right? He supports you.
Democrat. Yep.
Is the chair of this committee, has she called for you to resign this Congress?
She has not.
She called for you to be suspended last Congress, but I don't think she's called for you to resign this Congress, has she?
We've had good conversations on a variety
Now,
of
I know where Mr. Connolly's at and some of the Democrats, but I mean, last time you were here, you had protesters banging on pots and pans outside your house. You had 90-some people calling for you to resign. You were the worst guy on the planet last time you were here. I just want to know what's changed.
Maybe that's not for me to answer.
I mean, they were so ticked last time, Mr. DeJoy. They passed a bill. They called us in on a Saturday in August to pass a bill, and then they had a hearing on the bill they passed 2 days later. You remember that?
Sir, it was an unfortunate set of circumstances for me, for my family, for the postal employees, for the postal board. None of it was based in any type of fact. It was sensationalization. But we're through. I'm through that. The board's through that. We're just trying to get our plan, get this legislation passed, and get on with the improvements we need to make.
They passed a bill on Saturday, August 22nd, a bill they know had no chance of becoming law, a bill that was not even taken up in the Senate. Then they had a hearing on the bill they already passed 2 days later. Normally, you do it the other way around. Normally, you actually have a committee get together, look at the legislation, debate it, discuss it, have witnesses, get expert testimony, all that stuff, and then you maybe pass it out of committee and go to the floor and do it. They called us in special to pass a bill on a Saturday and then had a hearing on Monday, and all that weekend they had protesters at your house disrupting your family and, frankly, your neighbors as well. And now you're telling me you got no one on the Board of Governors asking you to resign, no protesters at your house, the President hasn't asked you to resign, the Chairwoman hasn't asked you to resign, and I want to know what's happened. What's different between February 24th, 2021 and August 24th, 2020? What happened in those 6 months? What could explain the Democrats' difference in attitude?
Mr. George, Congressman, I don't want to participate.
What do you mean you don't want to participate? I'm asking you a question, a simple
question.
I believe Can you hazard a guess as what might have happened between August 24th, 2020,
I am hoping,
when they passed a bill and then had a hearing on it? What may have happened between August 24th, 2020 and February 24th, 2021? What could have happened in the interim there that would change the attitude of Democrats?
One of two things. Either everyone's anxious to hear our new strategic plan, or we had an election.
I'm sure that's it. I'm sure that's it. Still waiting for an answer. I did this to you when you were here last time, Mr. DeJoy. I asked you, to comment on something. You wouldn't do it then either. What happened between August and February? What important event happened?
We had an election.
We had an election. It was all a charade. You not take my word for it. The Wall Street Journal called it a giant conspiracy theory. Called us back in. It was all part of the predicate for laying the groundwork for the mail-in balloting and all the chaos and confusion the Democrats wanted, and the laws that I think they passed in so many states, frankly, in an unconstitutional fashion. It was all about politics. It was all about the election. Agree with that, Mr. DeJoy?
It was a very sensitive time for the nation, and there was a lot of activity.
They accused you of things that they said you were restricting overtime. False. They told you, you were taking the collection boxes, doing something that had never been done before, even though it had been done by every previous Postmaster General. 12,000 of them had been moved by the Obama administration Postmaster General, but somehow you were the worst. Again, all under the guise of creating this crazy chaos that they wanted around the election relative to mail-in balloting, and you were the guy they used to launch it all, to start it all in the summer, when everyone was calling, saying all kinds of, you were the, like I said, they had you as the worst guy on the planet back then, and now everything, it seems to be so much better now.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And all the gaslighting that we just heard does not change facts. Mr. Diamondstein, please move the mic close to your mouth. Thank you. Am I making this up, as Mr. Jordan apparently would have you believe, that the President of the United States last summer, Donald J. Trump, publicly said voting by mail would lead to massive fraud? Did he say that, or am I imagining that, Mr. Diamondstein?
I don't think you're imagining it. What I recall him saying at one point is he was going to make sure that the Postal Service got no financial COVID emergency relief, because then they would be able to more effectively deliver ballots.
Thank you. But the point is, it was Donald Trump, the Republican nominee, who was planting the idea, aided and abetted by disruptive changes proposed by a new Postmaster General and a compliant Board of Governors, that actually eroded public confidence in the ability to vote by mail. That wasn't a Democratic narrative. That was a Republican narrative by the President of the United States and his enablers. And oh, by the way, inconvenient fact, Mr. Heiss would have you believe that it was partisans on this committee, and he quoted a number of Democrats, by the way, admitted Democrats. For the record, I'm an admitted Democrat and damn proud of it. I didn't vote to overturn an election, and I will not be lectured by people who did about partisanship.
Jim Jordan was grandstanding, an usual trick played by some in the Congress. It was a totally unnecessary topic to get into during the hearing, but it went there anyway, and Gerry Connolly gave it back nicely when he told Jim Jordan that he will not be lectured on bipartisanship by people who voted to overturn the election. And it is an effective line of attack from the Democrats, and one that can stick and evoke memories. I will not be lectured by people who voted to overturn the election. I have no clue why Jordan had to start off about what happened last year when we were meeting to discuss the plans for the future. He triggered the whole conversation and got roasted nicely by Gerry. Jordan spent so much time talking about intricate details about when this happened, when that happened, this date, that date, blah, 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 blah. And what he will not talk about is what the farmer guy told the entire world to hear. Jordan tried to shift the blame onto Democrats for criticizing DeJoy and the actions he took with respect to delivering the mail-in ballots. But the trigger went off when the farmer guy laid out in his own words how the USPS will not have universal mail-in voting if it ran out of funds.
They need that money in order to have the post office work so it can take all of these millions and millions of ballots. If they don't get those two items, that means you can't have universal mail-in voting because they're not equipped to have it.
And then, when DeJoy, even if we assume that his intentions were for the sake of the agency, goes ahead and makes some business decisions, how will that look? Especially when those decisions are overlaid with what the farmer guy said. So if anything, Jim Jordan should have tore into the farmer guy for saying what he said and asked him to apologize to Louis DeJoy publicly. Hope Jim Jordan calls out the farmer guy the next time when he speaks on this issue. I think he will. What do you think? Thanks for watching. If you like it, please do subscribe.